I do believe that we're compelled to follow a line that leads to our further development. And I do think that that involves mimicry of the hero, for example. The hero, psychologically speaking, is that figure which represents a potential stage of development for you. And you'll find your hero because you'll admire something or someone. And why is that? Well, I gave you the best explanation for that I can. That's the future you, in some sense, manifesting itself in the present, saying, here's where you could go.
Yeah.
And that's the instinct for growth.
Another aspect that they externalized was the idea of the daemon, which is almost like the mercurial impulse that's taken and stretched out for a long time. It's something that's continually drawing you towards some potential realization of what you're capable of. And they put that again in this kind of demigod landscape. But of course, that was just their way of understanding things.
Well, but it also makes a tremendous amount of sense. Like
sure.
to make rage a god like Mars. Well, yes. Why? Well, it's immortal. I mean, rage will be here long after you're gone. You're definitely its pawn at times. You know, it's not obvious who's in control when you're enraged.
Yeah.
In fact, at some levels of rage, that can even be a legal defense, because we recognize that you can be out of your head. Your normal personality isn't in control. And really powerful motivational forces have that transcendent reality. It's not, rage is older than human beings. It's really, really old. And it can have you in its grip. Sexual impulse is the same way. Hunger. All of these things are unbelievably powerful forces. And they don't just operate on the primordial level, as far as I'm concerned. There are sophisticated gods of motivation. And we are possessed by them when we do such things as go to movies. We don't notice as what the hell are we doing watching this movie? Why are we entertained by it? Why does it grip our interest? We don't know. We don't even question it. It's like, well, it's entertaining. It's fun. It's interesting. If it's interesting, you don't have to justify it. Then you think, right? Well, that's interesting in and of itself. If it's interesting, you don't justify it. And then someone can tap you on the head and say, look what you're doing. And you think, oh yeah, that's kind of odd that I'm doing that. What the hell am I doing standing in line for 3 days to see Star Wars when I'm an atheistic engineer? Right. What's going on here? Oh, look at that. It's a religious impulse.
Yeah.
And I don't have a religion. And so this is filling the gap. And that's why I go to Star Wars conventions. And I'm possessed by something that I haven't pursued.
Mm. One of the things that you wrote was really powerful for me to read, because to me, I think it described my snitch, my round chaos, that thing that I'm seeking underneath the games that I'm playing. And so I'm going to read this little snippet here. Who could you be? You could be all that a man or woman might be. You could be the newest avatar in your own unique manner of the great ancestral heroes of the past. What is the upper limit to that? We do not know. Our religious structures hint at it. How would someone who determined to take full responsibility for the tragedy and malevolence of the world manifest itself? The ultimate question of man is not who we are, but who we could be. That's it for me. I mean, for me, I read that, I was like, yep, that's it. There's the snitch with its wings and its golden, mercurious allure that I'm really chasing underneath all of this. And I enjoy all these other things, but
who could you be?
Exactly.
You see that in children. I watched little children play, and what they're doing, they're attempting to grow forward, but they toy with identities. My little granddaughter, I wrote about her in this book too. It's so funny watching her. She had Pocahontas, the Disney movie, and she had a Pocahontas doll, and she watched that movie a number of times. And then it's been a year now. She's only 3.5. For a whole year, she has two names, Scarlett and Ellie. And one's her middle name, but she's called one or the other, and seems to be perfectly comfortable with both. If you ask her if she's Ellie, she'll say yes. And if you ask her if she's Scarlett, she'll say yes. But if you ask her if she's Pocahontas, she'll also say yes. And then if you ask her if she is Scarlett, Ellie, or Pocahontas, she'll say she's Pocahontas. And she's been insisting on that for a whole year. And so she's playing out this role. I don't know how much of her imagination is devoted to it, but enough for this, like that's, if you're, how old are you? 40 something?
Just turned 40.
Yeah, okay. So, imagine that you had a fictional identity for 15 years. That's approximately the same relative length of time. And the kids, they weave up a fantasy world and then they play out an identity in that. And then they weave out another fantasy world and they play out an identity with that. And they shape that identity by their interactions with other children and adults. And hopefully they find an identity that suits them, that other people also accept. Because your identity has to be something that other people accept, or it isn't going to work for you. But that's all part of this exploration of who they could be. It's the play is, in fact, the exercising of that realm of possibilities. And so a good father, a good parent for that matter, but I think at least as an archetypally paternal role, puts a border of security around the child, and the mother might be inside that border of security when she has young children. And play can take place there. And the play is the investigation of multiple identities with the hope of finding one that is functional, that is also socially desired, because those things can't be dissociated. One of the reasons I think that the identity politics has bothered me so much, speaking of snitches, it's bothered me. It's like, this bothers me. And I've only recently realized that some of it had to do with what I saw as limitations on free speech, which is I have to say the words that, some authority or some population demands that I say, which I don't like. But there's something else too, which is that it's based on a very misleading theory of identity. Your identity is not just how you feel about yourself at this moment. And you can't impose that on other people because they don't know how to deal with that. Like, even if they wanted to, they wouldn't know the rules of the game. You have to negotiate your identity with other people. And so then you have to think of identity as something that's negotiated with other people. And so if you have an implicit theory of identity, like the one that seems to be increasingly dominating the cultural landscape, which is identity is something that's only subjectively determined and can also change from moment to moment, then you're misleading people as they develop because they come up with a very unsophisticated notion of what identity is. And that's not good because that's core. And part of your identity is your value to other people. That's a huge part of it. And that's not subjective. That's other people make that decision.
Yeah.
So,
and you talk about that in, I think it's chapter 3, where you say that's one of the ways we keep our sanity is talking to other people and the interaction with our community and all of these other things that isolate us more and more to a single subjective perspective is going to lead to a certain madness.